Hey guys, thank you again for coming to check out my channel. Today's video is going to be all about how I study Japanese and have become fluent in Japanese in such a short time. I'll be going over resources, tips, and different things that I do to learn the language. Hope you enjoy. Whatever your interests might be for learning a language, whether that be the country's pop culture, food, the aesthetics. Countries can have aesthetics, right? Culture, or the people. It's good that you use it to drive your love for the language that you're trying to learn. Learning a new language can be tiring and difficult, but if you can find a reason to keep you coming back to learn, you will always find yourself climbing the ladder of success towards fluency. Starting off by setting simple goals for yourself with loose timelines. Don't beat yourself up by setting rigid and possibly unrealistic goals. This could hinder your progress rather than aid it. Pick up fun goals rather than academic. The learning process should be fun. As an English teacher, I've found that most of my students retain information better if the activities are engaging, educational, and based off of their interests. This should be the same for your own learning goals. If you hate sitting and memorizing 100 words a day, then don't. First off, 100 words is highly unrealistic and wouldn't recommend it. There are hundreds of ways to learn new vocabulary. You don't need to pull out your own teeth to do so. Some things that I like to do to help me learn new words and memorize new words is I'll read the same book over and over again until I find myself becoming more familiarized with the vocabulary that's within that book. I'll go into the book, I'll make little memos with sticky notes or just write directly into the book. And then this is a great way to help you solidify not only new words, but in the case of Japanese, new kanji, which is something that is imperative in developing fluency in specifically Japanese. Another tip that I found is really helpful for me is forgetting your first language. When learning a new language, if you're constantly going back and translating word for word every new vocabulary term you come across, your life is going to be very difficult. You should go about learning a language like a baby does. For example, a baby doesn't learn its entire language through flashcards. They learn by observation and mimicking the language that their parents use. They observe and then hone words that can be absorbed through the actions of others. This is something that I find myself doing all the time. I often mimic the things that my friends say or the things that I hear in television shows, on YouTube, really anywhere that I can absorb the language. I then immediately apply that new acquisition or that new grammar point into my own vocabulary. And then I'm already familiarizing myself with new grammar points, with new vocabulary terms, and so on. And this helps me definitely acquire the language far faster than I feel people that are only going back and looking at grammar points from a textbook or memorizing words that they see without using them. So, for example, I don't know if you guys know PPAP's Apple Pen, but it's a pretty good example of what I'm talking about. You have an apple. He doesn't say apple, ringo. He just says apple and makes the shape of an apple. I mean, all kids know what an apple is, hopefully, but it's a really good explanation of how to go about learning a language in a way that isn't just from memorization. It goes from taking language acquisition from memorization to input, which is a little bit different. Because if you're memorizing something, you're kind of just drilling the content into your mind rather than inputting it into your daily life, inputting it into your verbiage and your vernacular. Another important thing to know is that learning a language takes time. And that what might work for one learner might not work for the next. You need to find your own pace and stick to it. Some other things that I do when I am studying Japanese will make an outline of what it is that I want to study that week or that day or in that moment that I feel like studying. So if I feel that my handle of Japanese grammar is getting a little okashi toka, I will go back and look at my textbook and look at the grammar points that I have already gone over or the grammar points that I'm familiar with myself and just go through and drill those. Another thing that I personally like to do is I like to take the test before I go in and figure out what it is that I get wrong in the grammar or vocabulary or kanji questions that I get wrong, and then just review those. Because I feel a lot with language learners is that yes, we do review, and reviewing is very important to the acquisition of a language. I feel that we go over the same things far too much, and we're only going over the same content that we've been going over for the last, year or so. So I think it's really important to get a book like the book that I have for the JLPT 3. It's just 500 questions in Japanese, and then you answer the questions, and on the back of the page page has the answers and the explanation of the grammar pattern and like the other grammar patterns that are explained or presented in the question on the previous page, and it's really helpful because I can then differentiate between the language or the grammar function that I already understand with the grammar function that I'm not completely aware of, and then I go from there into my grammar textbook and find that specific grammar point, so then I can then review that grammar point. Another thing that I do to help me with my kanji is that, again, I read so much in Japanese. I will read from magazines, I pick up textbooks, I pick up books that are filled with pictures, like fashion books and things like that, to help me have visual aids going along with my understanding of the language, or like visual aids to go along as I'm reading the material. And as an adult, you don't want to sit down and read a whole bunch of children's books because those are just not within your interest. So what I found helpful for me is I really enjoy fashion, and because fashion books tend to have a lot of pictures, you can kind of get the general information, not only just from the pictures, but they also have a simpler way of explaining the material, or explaining, or just presenting the information, which I find really helpful when learning a new language, whether that's Japanese, whether that's Korean or French. I think it's really helpful to find quote-unquote adult picture books that you can use as your study material. As far as writing kanji goes, part of Japanese that I definitely skimp out on. So recently I've downloaded this app called Kanji, and I've just been practicing and drilling basically from that app. I am not a person to sit down and write a whole bunch of things in the hope of memorizing the material, like just writing repetitively. The kanji isn't something that is fun or interesting for me, so it's not something that I tend to do. However, I want my handwriting to get better in Japanese, and the only way to do that is to practice. So I found a mini goal within a larger goal. Like, I don't want to study kanji because I don't like the repetitive nature that comes with learning kanji. However, I do want to have nice handwriting whenever I'm writing in kanji, and the only way to really become better at writing is to write. So that's kind of the ultimatum that I've come up for myself to encourage me to want to write kanji more than I currently do. But yeah, that's pretty much the video. Here are a couple of resources that I use, some textbooks, apps that I use to help me learn Japanese. They're really, really great. If you guys want an in-depth video about the specific apps that I use, I totally would love to make that. But if not, they will be linked in the description box below, so please check that out. Leave a comment if you have any cool apps that you would like to share, and if not, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.